the war had finally ended, but the air aboard the Starhaven station still carried the scent of tension. The great station orbited a dying red star whose light painted every metal surface in shades of blood and rust. Here among 100 alien races, peace was supposed to begin, yet peace was never easy, especially when pride, fear, and old scars still lingered. The Galactic Alliance Summit had gathered representatives from every major power. Tall insectoid generals from the Crethi hives stood beside crystalline diplomats of the Velar Dominion. Among them was the newest member species, the humans of Earth. They had entered the galaxy only 50 years ago, yet had already changed the balance of power. Some admired them, others resented them, and no one resented them more than Princess Lyrana of Zerathia. At 19 cycles of age, she was already known across the Empire for her sharp tongue and royal arrogance. The Zerathi were tall and graceful beings, their skin faintly glowing blue, their eyes like molten silver. They were proud descendants of a warrior culture, bioengineered to be stronger and faster than most species. To Lyrana, the idea that a fragile human could stand beside her people as an equal was laughable. That morning, as she walked through the marble corridors of the station, her royal guards following closely, she caught sight of something that stopped her. Standing motionless near the grand hall doors was a human soldier, tall, silent, and fully armored in the dull gray of the Terran Defense Corps. His armor was clearly old, scratched from countless battles. The human emblem, a simple blue circle with a white star, was faded almost beyond recognition. Yet there he stood, watching everything with calm eyes behind his helmet visor. Lyrana frowned. "Why do they keep those metal statues in the halls?" she whispered to her advisor. "Do they think peace needs guards now?" Her advisor, an elderly Zerathi diplomat, gave a nervous chuckle. "That one is Sergeant Daniel Reeve, Princess. He was assigned to the summit's protection detail. The humans insisted on sending him." "Insisted?" Lyrana's tone dripped with disbelief. How very typical. They arrive late to the stars, stumble through their first century of spaceflight, and now they believe themselves protectors of peace. The old diplomat tried to hush her. "Careful, Princess. The humans are valued allies." She ignored him and stepped closer to the soldier. Her silver gown shimmered as she moved, every inch of her posture radiating royal superiority. The hall grew quieter. Many delegates paused to watch. Encounters between humans and Zerathi were still rare, and curiosity filled the air. "You there," she called out. "Human, do you understand me?" The soldier turned his head slightly. His voice came through the helmet speaker, low and calm. "Yes, Your Highness," Lyrana smiled thinly. "Do you always hide behind metal? Or is your kind afraid the galaxy might see how weak you truly are?" Several nearby aliens chuckled softly, waiting for the human to react, but Daniel said nothing. He stood perfectly still, his posture neither defensive nor aggressive. His silence seemed to unsettle her more than any insult could have. She took another step forward, eyes narrowing. "Is your armor your courage, human? Or does it whisper orders for you too?" Still no response. The hall grew colder. The laughter faded into uneasy silence. The soldier's quiet presence carried a strange gravity, as if he had seen things none of them could imagine. For a brief moment, Lyrana felt something she had never felt before. Doubt, but pride quickly pushed it aside. She raised her chin and turned away. "How disappointing," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "I expected more from a so-called Terran hero." As she walked away, her advisor whispered nervously, "Princess, you risk offending the humans. They are unpredictable." "Unpredictable?" she scoffed. "They are primitive. Their entire history is full of fighting as if violence were a game. My people surpassed such barbarity long ago." Yet deep inside, a strange curiosity flickered. The human had not answered her insult with anger or fear. He had simply stood there, calm, steady, almost patient. Later that day, during the summit's formal meeting, she saw him again, standing guard at the edge of the council chamber. The human representative sat among the others, speaking humbly but firmly. Every time one of them stood to speak, the room seemed to listen. Lyrana could not understand it. They were not the most advanced species, nor the most beautiful, nor the richest, but there was something in their tone, a quiet strength, a belief that words could build bridges even where war had burned them down. She glanced again at the soldier by the wall. His armor still bore marks of old battles. She wondered how many lives those dents represented. When the meeting ended, Lirana joined a gathering of young nobles from other empires in the lounge. The topic, of course, turned to humans. "They are reckless," said a Sorin captain with silver scales. "During the war, they charged into battles without shields. We thought they were mad." "Mad?" laughed another. "They were desperate. They fought because they had nothing to lose." Lirana smiled, feeling the attention shift to her. "I met one today," she said, her tone proud. "He was exactly as I expected, silent, dull, and hiding behind armor. Perhaps humans wear it not for battle, but because they are ashamed of what lies beneath." The aliens around her laughed again, yet in the back of her mind, she remembered those motionless eyes behind the helmet. There had been no shame there, only calm. Before she could think further, a voice interrupted. It was the old diplomat again. "Princess, forgive my boldness, but the human soldiers are hosting a demonstration tomorrow. A combat exercise for peacekeeping protocols. It might interest you." "A demonstration?" Lirana tilted her head. "You mean they plan to show off their fighting?" "Yes, Your Highness. Many species are participating." Her smile returned. "Then I shall attend. Perhaps I'll show them what real skill looks like." That night, Starhaven's corridors were quiet. Through her window, Lirana watched the red star flicker beyond the glass. It was dying, yet still shining, stubborn, defiant against time itself. She wondered if humans were like that star, refusing to fade even when they should. The thought annoyed her, but it also intrigued her. Across the station in the soldiers' quarters, Sergeant Daniel Reeve sat polishing the dented plates of his armor. Each mark told a story, of friends lost, of worlds saved, of sacrifices that no one would ever know. He had heard the princess's words, of course, but insults did not bother him. He had faced worse, enemies who screamed in rage, commanders who doubted him, and nights when the silence of space itself felt heavier than gravity. He finished cleaning the armor and looked out at the same red star through a small window. The station lights reflected faintly on the glass, outlining the tired but determined expression on his face. He whispered softly, "Tomorrow's just another day." Back in her quarters, Lirana adjusted her royal insignia before the mirror. Her pride gleamed as brightly as the jewels on her gown. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "I will remind the galaxy why Zerathia leads, and why humans follow." Neither of them knew that the next day's demonstration would change both their lives forever, and challenge everything the galaxy believed about what it truly meant to be strong. Morning came to Starhaven Station, and with it came the hum of excitement. The grand training arena, usually empty, was alive with sound and color. Dozens of alien soldiers filled the stands, massive reptilian guards from the Drakari clans, agile insectoids from the Crethi hives, and even quiet crystalline observers from the Velar Dominion. The reason for the gathering was simple: the Galactic Peace Demonstration. Every major species had sent one of their finest warriors to show their fighting skill, not for war, but as a symbol of peace and unity. Yet deep down everyone knew the truth. It was still about pride. Every species wanted to prove that they were the strongest. At the edge of the arena, Princess Lirana stood tall, wearing the sleek silver armor of her Royal Guard division. Her long blue hair shimmered in the light, and her glowing eyes held a confident, almost playful challenge. She had trained since childhood in martial combat, her every movement precise and elegant. To her, this was not a demonstration. It was a chance to prove that Zerathians were still unmatched. The announcer's voice echoed through the dome. "Participants, prepare for your matches. All weapons are simulation-coded. No permanent harm allowed. Remember, this is for peace." Lirana smiled. "Peace through dominance," she whispered. From the other side of the arena, the human team entered. They were fewer in number, their armor simpler, less decorated, but their faces showed quiet confidence. They moved like soldiers who had seen real war, not just training. Among them walked Sergeant Daniel Reeve, his old scarred armor dull against the bright lights. As he stepped forward, the other species murmured. "That one again?" hissed a scaled Drakari. "Didn't he serve during the Zortek siege?" "Yes," whispered another. "The human who fought for 3 days without rest." The whispers spread, and even Lirana raised an eyebrow. Perhaps this one wasn't as ordinary as she had thought. Still, her pride refused to yield. When the announcer invited volunteers for the cross-species sparring round, she lifted her hand immediately. "Princess Lirana of Zerathia challenges the human representative." Gasps filled the arena. Humans rarely fought against royalty, but Daniel only nodded once and stepped forward, calm as ever. Liranna smirked. Do you accept human? Or will you hide behind your metal shell again? Daniel's voice came through his helmet, quiet but steady. I accept. They walked to the center of the arena. The floor shimmered with energy as the simulation grid activated. Holographic weapons appeared, training spears, shields, and short blades, each one designed to register impact without causing harm. Liranna chose a long energy staff, spinning it effortlessly in her hands. Daniel picked a simple training spear, examining its balance before giving a small nod. You don't have to hold back, she said confidently. I wasn't planning to, Daniel replied calmly. The signal sounded. Liranna moved first. Her body blurred with speed as she charged forward, staff swinging in a wide arc. Daniel sidestepped neatly, the attack passing inches from his helmet. He countered with a precise thrust toward her shoulder, but she blocked it with a sharp twist of her wrist. Sparks danced across the simulation field. The crowd roared. The princess's movements were graceful and fast, each strike a perfect display of her training. But Daniel's responses were smooth, efficient, almost mechanical. He didn't waste motion. Every parry was just enough. Every step was measured. Within minutes, the audience noticed something strange. Though Liranna attacked again and again, Daniel hadn't taken a single hit. And yet, he hadn't struck her either. He was holding back. Frustrated, Liranna lunged harder, her staff whirling faster. Is this all? Do humans only dodge? Daniel replied between breaths. No, but I don't fight to show off. I fight to learn, the words irritated her. She pressed forward, aiming for a decisive strike. Daniel stepped aside at the last instant, letting her own momentum pull her off balance. Before she could recover, he lightly tapped her shoulder with the spear, scoring a point. The arena fell silent. Liranna's eyes widened. You, she began, but before she could finish, Daniel lowered his weapon. Reset, he said softly. Try again. Anger flared inside her. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her generals. She attacked again, faster, harder. Daniel met her each time with calm precision. He didn't rush, didn't boast, didn't even look proud when he countered her strikes. It wasn't a fight of speed versus speed. It was experience versus pride. Liranna had been trained for perfection. Daniel had been forged through survival. After 10 minutes, she was breathing hard. Sweat formed on her forehead. Her muscles ached. Yet the human moved as if he'd barely begun. She couldn't believe it. How are you not tired? Daniel tilted his head slightly. Because I've fought longer battles. The audience began whispering again. Some aliens exchanged glances of respect. Even the Drakari captain muttered, the human's discipline is unnatural. Finally, the princess's pride reached its limit. She dropped her staff and faced him with a cold smile. Enough games. Let's make this fair. Take off that armor, human. Let me see if you still stand so tall without it. The crowd gasped. Removing armor in a combat demonstration was unthinkable. It wasn't just dangerous, it was a challenge of honor. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he set his spear down and reached for the locks on his chest plate. A hiss echoed through the arena as he removed the armor piece by piece. First the helmet, revealing a tired but steady face. Then the shoulder guards, the chest plate, the arm braces. When he finally stood bare from the waist up, the audience went quiet. His skin was pale and rough, marked with scars, thin lines, burns, healed wounds from countless battles. Each one told a story. He wasn't built like the towering aliens, but his muscles were lean and strong. Carved by hardship, not design. Liranna froze. For the first time, she didn't see a metal puppet. She saw a soldier, one who had fought without the safety of enhancements, without regeneration, without the luxury of perfection. Daniel picked up his spear again, now without armor. His voice was calm. Armor helps me survive, princess. It doesn't make me fight, she hesitated. The fire in her chest dimmed into something she couldn't name. The crowd waited, silent, holding its breath. Do you wish to continue? Daniel asked. Liranna nodded weakly. Yes, they fought again, but this time the rhythm had changed. Her strikes no longer carried arrogance. They carried respect. Daniel didn't dodge to mock her. He guided her movements, redirecting her force with precision. Every time she overextended, he corrected her balance. It was less a fight now, more a lesson. Finally, as she tried one last strike, he caught her staff gently and twisted it away. The weapon fell to the ground with a soft clang. Before she could react, his spear's tip stopped an inch from her chest. Never touching, never cruel. The simulation grid chimed. Match ended. The silence that followed was complete. No one laughed. No one mocked. Every being in the arena had seen what happened. A human had defeated a royal warrior without rage, without arrogance, and without armor. Daniel lowered his spear and gave a small, respectful nod. "Thank you for the match, Your Highness." Then he turned and walked away quietly, leaving her standing there, stunned and speechless. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, but in applause. Even alien warriors bowed slightly in acknowledgement of the human's skill. Lyrana stood frozen, her pride shattered, her mind racing. She had wanted to humiliate him, but instead, she had learned something she couldn't understand, that strength could exist without superiority, and victory could come without cruelty. That night, long after the crowds had gone, she stood alone in the empty arena, staring at the marks left by their battle. Her fingers brushed the spot where his spear had stopped, just short of her chest. For the first time in her life, the proud princess of Zerathia felt small, not because she was weak, but because she had finally glimpsed what true strength looked like. The next morning, Starhaven Station was filled with whispers. News of the duel between Princess Lyrana and the human soldier had spread across every deck. Some said the princess had been humbled. Others said the human's bravery had reminded the galaxy what true strength looked like. Every corridor buzzed with quiet awe. Aliens who once laughed at humans now spoke their name with respect. But for Lyrana, there was no comfort in the attention. She sat alone in her private chamber, staring at her reflection. Her silver armor lay on the table, polished and shining, but she didn't feel proud anymore. Her thoughts were filled with the image of Daniel standing unarmored in the arena. The scars across his body weren't ugly to her anymore, they were haunting. Each one seemed to carry a story written not in words but in pain and courage. Why did he do it? She whispered softly. Why remove his armor just to prove a point? He could have been hurt. Her advisor entered quietly. Princess, are you well? The council is requesting your presence. I'm fine, she said quickly, though her tone lacked confidence. Just thinking. The advisor hesitated. About the human? Her glowing eyes narrowed slightly. Is that what everyone is talking about? Yes, the advisor said. The other delegates are calling it the human lesson. Some even say it was the most honorable match ever seen in the arena. Lyrana looked down. Honorable. The word tasted strange on her tongue. She had fought to win, to prove herself. But Daniel, he had fought with calm purpose, as if victory meant nothing to him. When she finally arrived at the council chamber, the atmosphere was different. The human delegation received nods of respect from species who once ignored them. The Terran flag hung proudly behind their table, a blue field with a white star, simple but powerful. Daniel stood near the back, his armor reassembled but still marked by age. He looked exactly the same as before, quiet, patient, and focused. As Lyrana entered, the room fell silent. Many expected tension between her and the human soldier, but Daniel only gave her a respectful nod, as if nothing unusual had happened. The meeting began. The ambassadors discussed trade routes, peace treaties, and rebuilding worlds damaged by the recent war. Yet through it all, Lyrana couldn't focus. Every time Daniel spoke, his calm, steady voice filling the chamber, she found herself listening more closely than she intended. His words carried no arrogance, no need for attention. He spoke simply, clearly, and with conviction. When the meeting ended, Lyrana remained behind. She watched Daniel finish packing his data tablet. Finally, she stepped forward. Sergeant Reeve, she said quietly. He looked up. Your Highness, I wanted to thank you, she began awkwardly, for yesterday. You could have humiliated me, but you didn't. Daniel shook his head. That wasn't my goal, she frowned. Then what was your goal? He paused as if choosing his words carefully. To show that strength doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just standing your ground when it matters. Lyrana's expression softened. You speak as if you've seen a lot of battles. I have, Daniel said simply. Too many. She hesitated, curiosity rising. Then why do you still fight? Haven't you had enough? Daniel looked at the glowing star outside the window, its light dimming with age. Because someone has to stand between danger and the people who can't fight. That's what soldiers are for. It's not about glory, it's about duty. His words struck something deep inside her. Zarathian soldiers were trained to protect the Empire's honor. Humans, it seemed, fought to protect each other. That night, Liranna couldn't sleep. She kept replaying his words in her mind. Strength doesn't always need to shout. The next day, she asked permission to visit the human sector of Starhaven. Her guards protested. It wasn't proper for royalty to mingle with common soldiers, but she insisted. The human section was smaller than the others, simpler, almost plain. There were no gold banners or glowing walls, just steel corridors and the hum of life support systems. Yet the air felt alive. She saw humans laughing together, helping each other repair old equipment, sharing stories over meals. There was warmth here that she didn't find in her Empire's polished halls. Then she saw Daniel again, sitting with two young soldiers. They were laughing at something, an old story from Earth, she guessed. When he noticed her, he stood and saluted. "Your Highness," he greeted politely. "At ease, Sergeant," she said, smiling slightly. "May I speak with you?" "Of course." He led her to a quiet observation deck overlooking the stars. For a while, neither spoke. The view was peaceful, endless darkness dotted with points of light. Liranna finally broke the silence. "Your people are different from what I expected." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "You have no advanced gene programs, no bioenhancements, no inherited combat memory. Yet you survive. You adapt. You thrive," he chuckled softly. "We make do. Humanity's strength has always been that we learn fast. Every loss teaches us something." She nodded slowly. "In my culture, failure is shameful. We are taught that perfection is everything." "That sounds exhausting," Daniel said honestly. For the first time, she laughed softly. "It is." There was another pause, then Liranna asked, "Do you think I was foolish yesterday?" Daniel turned to her, his gaze calm. "No, you were proud, but pride isn't foolish. It just needs direction. You wanted to test yourself. That's not wrong." Her silver eyes glowed brighter for a moment. "You see the best in everyone, don't you?" "Not always," he said, smiling faintly. "But I try." Liranna looked down at her hands. "When you took off your armor, I felt something. I don't know what to call it. Shock? Respect? Maybe both. I realized that all my training, all my strength, it's nothing if I don't understand why I fight." Daniel didn't reply right away. He looked out at the distant stars. Then maybe yesterday wasn't about winning or losing. Maybe it was about learning. His simple words settled deep in her heart. They stayed like that for a while. Two people from different worlds, standing in silence, watching the same sky. When she finally returned to her quarters, her guards noticed the change immediately. The arrogance in her walk was gone. Her tone was calmer, her words softer. She no longer spoke of superiority or bloodlines. That evening, during dinner with her council, one of the nobles made a joke about weak little humans. To everyone's surprise, Liranna didn't laugh. Instead, she said firmly, "If they are weak, then I wish our people had even half their courage." The table fell silent. From that day, something began to shift in her. She started reading about Earth's history, its wars, its unity, its perseverance. She learned about humanity's endless struggle against impossible odds. And the more she read, the more she understood Daniel's quiet strength. He wasn't strong because he was human. He was strong because he refused to stop trying. Days later, the council announced a final exhibition before the peace ceremony. Each delegate would showcase something unique from their culture, a symbol of what made them proud. When it was the humans' turn, Daniel stood at the podium and held up a simple, tattered Terran flag. It wasn't beautiful or expensive, but he explained that this flag had been carried by soldiers for centuries, through wars, disasters, and victories. "It's not the cloth that matters," he said. "It's what it stands for. Hope, unity, the will to rise again." As he spoke, Liranna found herself clapping before anyone else. Her hands trembled slightly, but her heart felt light. For the first time, she wasn't clapping out of courtesy. She was clapping out of respect. And in that moment, she realized something powerful. The galaxy didn't need more perfect warriors. It needed people who fought for something greater than themselves. That night, Lirana looked at her reflection again. This time she didn't see a flawless princess. She saw a student, someone still learning what it meant to be strong, and she whispered softly, "Thank you, human." The days after the demonstration passed quietly, but something had changed across Starhaven Station. Aliens from many worlds now greeted the human soldiers with respect. Even species who once mocked them began to ask questions about their history, their world, and their courage. But no one felt that change more deeply than Princess Lirana of Zerathia. For the first time in her life, she found herself questioning everything she had been taught. Her lessons, her pride, her belief in superiority, all of it now seemed hollow. The more she thought of Sergeant Daniel Reeve, the more confused she became. He was not the strongest being she had ever met. He wasn't the fastest or the most advanced, and yet there was something unshakable about him, a strength that came from somewhere deeper than muscle or training. Lirana couldn't stop thinking about his words. Strength doesn't always need to shout. One evening, she sent a private message to the human delegation. She wanted to speak to Daniel alone. When he arrived at her quarters, she was waiting near the window, watching the dying red star outside, the faint glow reflected in her silver eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Daniel nodded politely. "Of course, Your Highness." "Please," she said, turning to face him, "no titles tonight. Just call me Lirana." He hesitated for a moment. "All right, Lirana." There was a brief silence between them. The hum of the station's engines filled the background. Finally, she spoke again. "I've been trying to understand something," she said. "My people have advanced for thousands of years. We perfected our bodies, our technology, even our minds. But after meeting you, I realized we may have forgotten the most important part of strength." Daniel looked thoughtful. "And what's that?" She met his eyes. "Purpose. You fight not because you love war, but because you believe in something. That's what makes humans different." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe we just don't know when to quit." Lirana actually laughed, a gentle sound. "Perhaps both." For a moment, she studied his face carefully. There was a tiredness in his eyes, but also kindness. She could see the weight of years spent fighting, yet also the peace of someone who accepted it. "Tell me," she said, "how did you become a soldier?" Daniel leaned back slightly, thinking. "I didn't plan to. My home was destroyed during the first contact wars. I joined the Terran Defense Corps because I didn't want anyone else to lose their home the way I did. I guess I wanted to protect something." Lirana lowered her gaze. "My people fight to protect our pride. You fight to protect your people. It seems I have been fighting for the wrong reason all along." Daniel shook his head. "Not wrong. Just different. You were taught that pride gives strength. I was taught that compassion does. Both can be powerful, but compassion lasts longer." His words lingered in the air. Lirana turned back to the window. The star outside flickered like a dying flame, its last light reaching across the black sea of space. "It's strange," she whispered. "That star has burned for millions of years, but now it's fading. And yet even in its final moments, it still gives light. Maybe that's what true strength is, giving light even when you're close to burning out." Daniel nodded slowly. "You're learning fast," she smiled gently. "I've had a good teacher." Later that week, the Alliance Cultural Gathering was held. Every race was invited to share something meaningful from their world. Music, stories, or history. The humans chose something simple. They brought a small wooden box, old and scratched. When they opened it, it played a soft melody. Earth's lullaby of hope, a song once sung to children during the darkest days of war. The tune was calm and gentle, filled with emotion. Even the most battle-hardened aliens sat in silence, listening. The song had no words, yet it spoke volumes, of love, loss, courage, and the will to continue. Lirana felt her chest tighten. Her heart ached in a way she didn't understand. When the song ended, she stood and bowed slightly to the human delegation. After the event, she found Daniel outside near the observation deck again. "That song," she said quietly. "It was beautiful." Daniel nodded. "It's an old one. My mother used to hum it when I couldn't sleep as a child. It reminded me that even in darkness there's always a reason to hope." Lirana looked at the stars. "My people have songs too, but they're always about victory and conquest. I think maybe we've forgotten how to sing about hope." "Then maybe it's time to remember," Daniel said. She turned toward him. Do you ever wonder why the galaxy fears humans? He smiled faintly. Because we don't stop. We adapt even when we're beaten down. We keep getting back up. Lirana nodded slowly. Yes, that's what frightens them. They cannot understand how a fragile species can endure so much pain and still smile. Pain is a teacher, Daniel said, but only if you listen. For a moment they stood side by side, both silent. The dying star pulsed faintly, its light brushing across their faces. In the following days, the two began to speak more often. Lirana visited the human sector regularly, learning about Earth's past, its wars, its achievements, its mistakes. Daniel showed her holograms of ancient Terran cities, oceans, forests, and mountain ranges. Lirana was fascinated. Your world is so beautiful, she said. And yet you left it to explore the stars. Daniel smiled sadly. Sometimes we leave home not because we want to, but because we have to. The stars are our second chance. She thought about that for a long time. Her people had expanded the empire for pride and power. Humans had expanded for survival and unity. The difference felt enormous. One evening she asked him, Do you ever get tired of being misunderstood? All the time, he said with a small laugh. But understanding takes time. We can't force it. We just keep doing what's right and eventually people see it. His calm confidence inspired her. Slowly she began to change, not just in words but in actions. She stopped ordering her guards around. She started listening more during council meetings. Even her father, the Zyrathian emperor, noticed the difference when she spoke through the holochannel. You sound wiser, my daughter, he said. What has changed? Lirana smiled faintly. I met someone who showed me that strength is not about power but about purpose. Her father was silent for a moment before nodding. Then perhaps you have finally learned what it means to lead. On the final night before the peace ceremony, Lirana and Daniel met again one last time by the great viewing deck. The red star was dimmer now, its light flickering weakly. Tomorrow the galaxy will sign the peace accord, Daniel said. A new beginning, Lirana nodded. And yet peace is fragile. It will take more than words to keep it. That's true, he replied. But it starts with people willing to understand each other. Like you and me, she smiled softly. When I first met you, I thought humans were arrogant for wearing armor. Now I see that you wear it not to hide weakness, but to carry the weight of your duty. Daniel looked at her with quiet respect. And I see that even those born into power can learn humility. They both laughed gently. Before leaving, Lirana placed her hand over her heart, the Zyrathian gesture of deep respect. Thank you, Daniel, for teaching me something my own people never could. He returned the gesture in the human way, a simple nod. Thank you for listening. As he turned to leave, Lirana looked out at the dying star one more time. She realized something beautiful. Even though it was fading, its light still reached across the galaxy, just like humanity's light, small, fragile yet powerful enough to inspire even an alien princess. That night, she wrote a message to her father. When peace is signed tomorrow, I will stand beside the humans not as a superior but as an equal. For in their quiet strength, I have found what our empire has long forgotten, the heart of a true warrior. She sealed the message and looked out at the stars. For the first time in her life, Princess Lirana felt at peace. The next morning came quietly over Starhaven Station. The corridors that had once echoed with the sounds of drills and soldiers' boots were now filled with diplomats, delegates, and peacekeepers from across the galaxy. Flags of many worlds waved above the grand hall. The air hummed with tension and hope mixed together. Today would decide the future of hundreds of civilizations. Today was the galactic peace ceremony. Among the guests, Princess Lirana of Zyrathia stood tall in her royal armor, its usual shining silver replaced with soft blue, the color of peace in her culture. Her once proud posture now carried calm confidence. She no longer looked down at others. She looked at them as equals, and when her eyes searched the crowd, she found the human soldier who had changed everything, Sergeant Daniel Reeve. He stood near the back, no longer in heavy combat armor but in a simple dark uniform. A faint smile touched his lips when he noticed her gaze. He gave a respectful nod and she returned it. It was a small gesture, but to her it meant more than any royal ceremony she had ever attended. As the delegates took their seats, the hall lights dimmed slightly. The massive central display came alive with the symbol of the Interstellar Alliance, a circle of stars, united. An old alien scholar stepped forward to begin the ceremony. For thousands of cycles our races have fought and feared one another, he said. But today we come together, not through power but through understanding. Let this day mark the end of our arrogance and the beginning of our shared destiny. One by one, leaders came forward to sign the Accord of Unity. Each race added their mark, digital or biological, to the glowing tablet at the center of the hall. When Lirana's turn came, she stepped forward gracefully. As she approached the podium, murmurs spread through the crowd. Many remembered her earlier arrogance, her sharp words against humanity. They whispered, wondering if the proud Zirathian princess had truly changed. She stopped before the microphone, looking at the sea of faces before her, and then she began to speak. Not long ago, she said, her voice clear and calm, I believed my people stood above all others. I thought that our strength, our intelligence, and our heritage made us superior. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. But I was wrong. The murmurs grew quiet. Every delegate, every soldier, even the reporters leaned closer. I met a man, a human soldier, who showed me that strength is not about domination or pride. It is about endurance, compassion, and the courage to stand again even when you have fallen 1,000 times. Her gaze swept the hall, and for a moment her eyes found Daniel's. When I mocked humanity, I thought I saw weakness. But what I truly saw was power, the kind that does not need to shout, the kind that survives when everything else fails. She took a deep breath. The Zirathian Empire will honor this peace not out of fear, but out of respect. For today I have learned that greatness is not inherited, it is earned through heart, through struggle, and through understanding. The hall erupted in applause. Even some of the stoic alien commanders rose to their feet. Daniel didn't clap loudly. Instead, he simply smiled, proud and quietly moved. Lirana signed her name on the glowing accord. The ancient symbol of Zirathia joined the circle of stars. For the first time in history, the human emblem and the Zirathian crest appeared side by side, glowing together. After the ceremony, celebrations filled the station. Music from dozens of worlds played through the air, and food stalls from every culture opened along the halls. Soldiers and civilians laughed together, something no one had seen before. Daniel stood by the observation window again, watching the same dying red star. Despite all the celebration behind him, his expression was calm, thoughtful. He didn't notice Lirana approaching until she spoke softly behind him. You always come here, he smiled faintly. It's quiet here. Reminds me that peace doesn't come from noise. She joined him by the window. The faint glow of the fading star reflected in her silver eyes again. Do you think the peace will last? Daniel thought for a moment before answering. Maybe, maybe not. But even if it doesn't, it's worth trying. Someone has to take the first step. Lirana nodded slowly. And if it fails? He turned to her. Then we start again. Humans are stubborn that way. She laughed quietly. Yes, I have noticed. They stood in silence for a while. The station slowly rotated, giving them a clear view of the faraway galaxy. Endless, shining, and full of possibilities. Lirana finally said, I will return to my world soon. My father wants me to lead a new council, one that focuses on rebuilding connections with other races. Daniel smiled. Sounds like a big task. It is, she admitted. But this time I will lead differently. Not with pride, but with heart. He nodded approvingly. That's how it starts. One change at a time. She looked at him seriously. I want to thank you, Daniel. You changed me, not with power, but with kindness. You reminded me that even a princess has something to learn. Daniel chuckled softly. And you reminded me that even soldiers can teach royalty a thing or two. They both smiled. As they spoke, a sudden announcement echoed through the hall. Attention all delegates. The final light of Starhaven's sun is beginning. Observation deck access open to all. Everyone moved to the deck to witness it. The red star was collapsing, slowly turning into a brilliant burst of white light, a supernova in its final stage. As it expanded, the colors danced across the glass walls, red, gold, purple, and blue. It was one of the most breathtaking sights in the galaxy. Lirana whispered, It's beautiful, even in its end. Daniel nodded. because it gave everything it had. Even in death it shines. The light washed over them, bathing their faces in warmth. Around them, delegates from every species stood together. Humans, Zyrathians, Vrek, Yulani, and more, united under the same light. In that moment, no one was superior. No one was lesser. They were simply beings, sharing a fragile peace under a dying star. Lyrana turned to Daniel and said softly, "Do you think one day your people and mine will truly see each other as one?" He looked at her with quiet conviction. "We already have. Right here." She smiled. When the light faded and the station's shields dimmed again, the new dawn of peace began. Reports spread across the galaxy. The Human-Zyrathian Accord had been signed successfully. Trade routes reopened, research teams formed, and former enemies began working side by side. But for those who had been there, the most powerful moment was not the signing. It was the sight of the two figures standing together at the window, a human soldier and an alien princess, watching a dying star give birth to new light. It became a symbol, a painting later known as the Star of Understanding. It hung in every major world's peace hall for generations. Years later, stories about that day were still told. Children learned about the time when a human soldier removed his armor and showed the galaxy what true strength meant. Princess Lyrana became known as the voice of peace, traveling across systems to teach unity through compassion. Whenever she spoke, she mentioned humanity, not as warriors, but as examples of resilience. And Daniel Reeve? He returned to Earth quietly. He never sought fame or power, but sometimes when he looked at the stars, he remembered the silver-eyed princess and the fading red sun they had watched together. He smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, she was still keeping her promise, building bridges where once there were walls. Because that was what humans did best. They didn't conquer the stars with weapons. They conquered hearts with courage, and so, the legend of the human soldier and the alien princess became one of the most beloved stories in galactic history. A story of humility, hope, and the truth that no matter how vast the universe is, understanding is the greatest strength of all.